Welcome to my Bob Thurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 340.
Greetings, everyone. How are you all today in this new year? It's a little bit worrisome as it is politically. It's glorious as far as we're all here on the miracle of Mother Earth. But I'm so delighted today to be welcoming the great healer and the author of this wonderful book, When Parts Speak, Tamala Floyd, LCSW. And Practical Guide to Healing with Internal Family Systems Therapy and Ancestor Wisdom. And really, I think it's wonderful. I've been encountering internal family systems therapy, and I'm a little bit lost among my parts and among my ancestors and so forth, but I really like it. And so here is Tamala Floyd. Welcome. She's a wonderful person and a great healer. And how are you, Tamala? How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful, Bob. Thank you for that introduction.
That's great. Well, I didn't elaborate more about the fact that you are a planetary citizen and you have adopted all beings as your kin, which is the position of a Buddhist mendicant, where they drop out from ordinary, sort of productive, tax-paying, whatever roles, and they are there to develop the human heart.
Mm-hmm. I love the way you shared that with me, because that's what this experience of traveling feels like to me. Like I feel like I'm connected to every place and person I encounter in this time of my life.
You even have a headdress, like a yellow headdress.
Yes.
Like the Tibetan lamas have a helmet like that. And they have a thing that looks sort of like a Greek soldier's uniform, but it isn't. It has like a thing like this, like a mohawk with yellow, 1,000 yellow threads, which symbolize the 1,000 Buddhas of this good, wonderful planet that we live on.
Yes.
They had 4 of them, and there's another 995 coming, in case people are worried that the oligarchs are going to really successfully destroy human life on Earth. They're going to fail, luckily.
Yes.
You have a beautiful yellow headdress. I think it's marvelous.
Thank you. That's my favorite color.
Oh, good for you.
It is, yes.
The color of wisdom and the color of joy and energy,
Yes.
Female Shakti power, actually, and wealth and prosperity, like the Indian goddess Lakshmi, is a yellow golden color,
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of my theories. And tell us, what is it? How do you listen when parts speak? Why don't we start with that? Introduction.
Absolutely. How we listen when parts speak is one. I just want to share that we all possess a wise, intuitive, healing resource, which in IFS we refer to it as the self. And it is the self coming into relationship with parts of ourselves that need healing is how we listen. So we're listening from the compassionate listener and healer within.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So then are you saying that it fits with a theory of human nature that the deepest self is good, it's original love, it's original compassion, not original sin and original something?
Right. Yeah.
So you're basing your thing on what your own discovery as a scientist and a psychologist, that
Mhm.
the human nature is basically this good self.
Absolutely. We say that when we are not blended with our parts, so say I have a part that feels insecure, a part that needs to be perfect, or a part that's critical, when those parts step back, what we're left is that intuitive self that you're describing.
Oh,
It's we're not, our parts are not activated, which means now I can come into relationship with that part that gets critical of me and others and
I,
see what that part wants to communicate with me.
I see. So if we, for example, had the disorder, personality disorder of having a part that wanted us to be dictator of the universe,
Hmm.
that might be a part we would want to find out what's wrong.
We want to, yes, we want to come into relationship with that part. Absolutely. There's a reason why. And the other thing is, those parts are protecting something vulnerable,
Well, that
you
is fascinating.
know?
So how would that work? How would that have come to be in a particular person?
Well, often our parts come to be through neglect, not getting the attention that we needed as children, parents who are not attuned to our needs, make us feel bad for even having the needs. And then, of course, on the far end, abuse, physical, sexual, mental, emotional abuses.
Mm-hmm. I see. So the sort of desperate desire to be the dictator of everybody else
Mm.
has to do with a deep fear of them, perhaps that they might
It
harm,
could.
and that is
Ab-
that part that is trying to protect the delicate infantile
mm.
from this kind of damage and injury and hurt,
Yes.
taken over to preemptively recreate the situation in a way.
Yeah, and the thing too about our parts that are protecting us,
Mhm.
the more extreme, Bob, our parts protect us, the more extreme they act,
Yeah.
that is an indicator of how deep our emotional wounds are. I have to act very extreme when I've been hurt very deeply.
Yes, yes, right. I get
Mhm.
to see that. And actually, I do see that in a prominent way
Yeah,
that we're all thinking about nowadays in the world, actually.
right.
Yeah. And I read a book about the youth of that person, and it was very harsh, I think,
Mm,
from the psychiatrist niece that that person has.
yeah.
So interesting. Now, when I was reading the thing and your book and some of the wonderful case histories you have,
Mm,
uh,
yeah.
and then you were showing as example anecdotally, very telling and very moving anecdotes about how as a therapist or B you did a couple as if you were doing your own part. Uh,
Hmm.
you sort of get with the part and you encounter it, I guess, in an inner meditation. Is that right? And because
Yeah,
that possible.
absolutely. That's
Maybe
a great,
maybe we
yes.
need to back up, and you first need to introduce the complete layperson, as I was before I started reading your book,
Yeah.
to listen to this. What is the IFS, internal family system therapy? What is that? Where does it come
What
from?
is it? Yes. So, internal family systems therapy was created by Richard Schwartz, and Dr. Schwartz looked at the human being as not one whole, but multiples,
Mhm.
and that us being multiples is the norm, not the exception as we used to think, right?
Mhm.
So, and when we talk about multiples, it's subpersonalities, and we call them parts in IFS. Our subpersonalities have complete personalities like you and I have. They feel, they see, they hurt, they have opinions and perspectives on life, they have behaviors. So I like to think of our parts, like when I was using the example of that critical part, as a
Mhm.
small human within that has a way of behaving within my system when things are happening that activate that criticism.
I see. I see. So the parts have internal. So then the internal family system is the organization of those parts into what one feels is a kind of unitary personality.
Yes, yes. And we call it a family because we have multiple parts. It's not just one. But yes, absolutely. And like a family, but I really love, we all have families, right? And we have members in our families that we're very close to, folks in
Yes,
the families we align with, but also people we're polarized with. It's the
yes,
same thing internally.
yes, I get it, exactly. And people normally might resist that description of their own sense of
Mm,
identity, except when, however they're behaving and however their situation is in life, they're having a problem, they're depressed or they're
mm.
sick or they're neurotic or something, and then they would seek help from a
Yes.
therapist such as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
how if they came to you that way, then how would you start with them?
Right. So the first thing I want to do is just listen to their story. I
Okay.
want to hear what brings you here, right? So you're saying the person is depressed, but as I'm listening to their story, I'm hearing the different parts involved.
Yeah.
I'm depressed because I recently lost a job. I'm also having problems with my spouse or partner who's upset because I'm no longer working and can't bring in money. And so that has us arguing all the time. And I know that I'm right and they're wrong.
Yeah.
So I hear that there are parts depressed. I
Yeah.
hear that there are parts that are upset that the partner is pressuring them to get a job. And then that's got this client in a tug of war, polarized with their partner. So I begin these sessions listening for the parts and then confirming with the client, is what I'm interpreting or hearing
Yeah.
correct? Does this feel like their experience?
Yeah.
And so I might say something like, I hear that there's a part of you that is depressed. And then at times there's a high frustration with your partner for the pressure of you to go back to work. Yes, yes, that's exactly what's happening. Have there been other times in your life that you felt pressure similarly to
Yeah.
what you're experiencing with your partner? To see
Yeah.
how this part kind of shows up in the person's life, maybe in other areas of their life, they're experiencing that depression or frustration.
Yes. Yes. That's great. That's great. So then they start revealing more things, and then they notice them. Then you point out to them what they are revealing themselves, actually. So in a way, you're helping them
Yes.
cover themselves, actually.
Yes. And I want to start speaking about parts. Like when a person comes in and says, I'm depressed,
Yeah.
that means all of them, the 100% makeup of them is depressed from
Yeah.
their perspective. I
Yeah.
want to help my clients appreciate that only one part of you is depressed,
Uh-huh.
you
Right.
know, and it's not all of you.
Yeah.
There are other things happening in the midst of being depressed, but we need to get into relationship with the
Yeah.
parts that do feel depressed and
Yeah.
hopeless and despair
Yeah.
because of the not working at this time.
Yes, I get that. That's wonderful. It reminds me of
Yeah.
the story of my friend Mark Epstein. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, yes.
Psychotherapist. He's sort of known as the meditation psychotherapist or the Buddhist psychotherapist. And and Richard Alpert, aka
Mm.
Ramdas, had been a teacher of his when he was an undergraduate in college. And then
Oh.
later he met him again when he was Ramdas and in Maui and so on. And then when Ramdas realized he had become a psychiatrist himself. So then Ramdas asked him, said, "Well, you're a psychiatrist, are you?" "Yes." He says, Mark. And then Ram says, "Well, as a psychiatrist, when you see your clients, your patients, do you see them as already free?" That's
Mm.
his question. And then Mark said he had to think about it for a minute, and then he was able to say yes.
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
what I want to ask you is, in order to do that, and for the patient to be able to have you do that, you must be seeing that intuitive and compassionate self in that patient, somewhere in there,
Yes.
unbeknownst to the patient.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hold that every single person who sits before me has that compassionate self inside that I want to help them identify and come
Yeah.
into relationship with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so that patient can do that with you because they feel that you do that, but they didn't even know that they
Mhm.
feel that you do that.
Right.
that
Right.
right?
And you know what they're experiencing? You're right on. You're absolutely right on, Bob. What they're experiencing is my self energy. Like when I sit down across from my client, I too have to be unblended from my parts, and maybe the part that wants to really help this person or the part that wants to be the perfect therapist. I have to unblend from those and show up in my self energy.
Yeah, that's so very
Yeah.
good. That's wonderful. Wonderful. So this is so interesting to me because there are people who misunderstand, I believe, the
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist idea, the very important Buddhist idea of compassion, But they say
Mm-hmm.
that compassion is not empathy. And they get very
Right.
scoldy about that. And they say, don't empathize. If you empathize too much, then you'll get dragged into other people's dramas, and you'll get
Mm.
lost in them. And
Yeah.
say something different, or don't empathize. Whereas what I believe from my studies of 63 years, which are still incomplete, of course,
Okay.
but I believe that what it is you totally empathize at the same time as you have something you find by total empathy, the Buddha nature in the person, or what you're calling the self, or what you're calling the
Mhm.
intuitive, compassionate part, even in the
Right.
one suffering, they also have a compassion.
Yes.
It's
Yes. And with the
empathy plus.
and
It's not no empathy in some weird
right.
thing. It's empathy plus related to
Absolutely.
your intuitive thing, because you have
Yes.
through it a little bit. Is that
Yes. And the thing about the what I add, and maybe that's in what you just said, Bob, in being compassionate,
yes,
I have a desire to do something, to see some type of movement, some type of healing happen for the person. So not just, maybe feeling sorry for them, or which is more like pity, but I
yes,
really
exactly.
want to
You want
hear, right. I
to,
want to see some type of healing. So that's what
yes,
self is offering. But here's the thing, self is detached from the outcome. So I
yes,
offer it, but the
yes,
person can accept or not accept.
yes, that's right. So that's really critical to their
Mm-hmm.
intuition, because then they don't feel it's intrusive. They
That's
feel that
right.
you're letting it play out from within themselves. You're
That's
directly
right.
observe what is happening within themselves, and you're not.
Yeah.
It's really, so then they feel more free with you, actually, and more safe.
Yes, they do.
Yes,
Yes.
I
Yes.
do. I feel safe.
Yeah. Aw,
I
thank
do.
you.
Oh, that's really great.
Thank you.
I love this. So,
Yeah.
so then the title, when listening, when parts speak, is a very brave
Mhm.
title. It launches right into the middle of it.
Right into it. Yeah. Because this is the thing. We often, and this was my experience personally, and as you say, I use many anecdotes from my life, of my personal experience with my parts, but I didn't want to listen. Like I was the part. When I was anxious, anxiety was all over me. And
Yes,
you cannot come into relationship with the parts or anything unless there's two of you, right? So if I'm
yes,
100%
yes,
blended
right.
and anxious, there's no one to be in relationship with
Yes,
that anxiety.
yes, yes, yes. Perfect. Amazing. I think that's wonderful. There's so much wisdom in that. And you do share, don't you? You do share um, where you first encountered some of your parts when you sort of started this learning this, right?
Yeah,
Was,
yeah.
was Richard Schwartz your therapist at that time?
He was not my therapist, but I absolutely have had trainings under him, and he's been a mentor to me. And we also do trainings together.
Yes, I see. So, but
Yeah.
you encountered a therapist who was in the tradition.
Oh, absolutely. Most
That
definitely.
helped you do that.
Yes.
That
Yes.
you recite that, which is really very revelatory. I think people,
Yeah.
when I read that, I felt very much at home about what you had yourself had gone through,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I love also the thing, the anecdote, the case story you have about the strong black woman complex.
Yeah.
I think, and then maybe you can tell us more about that. I think that is really very profound, I think.
Yes.
And
Yes.
very
So
far from my experience, but I think it's really important.
it's very important. So one of the things before talking about that, I first want to say when we look at burdens in IFS, We have personal burdens that happen because of our own experiences. Something
Yes.
happens in my upbringing, and now I
Yes.
have a personal burden around it. We also have cultural burdens that come from the society and culture that we
Yes.
grow up in, and then legacy burdens, which are the intergenerational burdens handed down from our familial lines.
Yes.
The reason I want to bring all three of those up is because the strong Black woman can be all three burdens. I can have the
Yes.
strong Black woman
Yes.
archetype from my family lineage. My
Yes.
mother, my grandmother, and on back, all had to be strong, had to deny their emotions, had to work hard, had to support the family, had to depend on themselves, right? So that's one way I can get it through my ancestry. But
Yes.
it also can be reinforced by the culture. Now, I grew up in the United States, in California. So some of the things in US culture is
Yes.
patriarchy as a cultural burden, racism as a cultural burden. Those two alone, patriarchy and racism,
Yes.
reinforce the strong Black woman
Yes.
part. And then personally, just in
Yes.
my own experience, there may be things that made me feel like I needed to be strong. I needed to deny my feelings. I needed to take care of other people. I needed
Yes.
to deny my health because it was more important for me to take care of people than
Yes.
attend to my own health. These are
Yes.
all qualities of the strong Black woman.
Yes. Yes. Right. And so you have that, you had that yourself, and then the person you were dealing with who wouldn't let herself rest. Can you tell us more?
Yeah. Yeah, that she had to continue to push through, take care of others, take care of her mother, take care of her business. She had a family, taking care of her family. She was also having health problems and totally wasn't paying attention to them.
Yes.
And I would point them out even in session, things that I could see in her body.
Yes.
You need to attend to that. I don't
Yes.
have time.
Yes.
I have to, do these other things.
Had many social work case clients, right? She's not a therapist technically, but a social worker is the kind of therapist, right?
Yes, we are. A clinical social worker is a therapist. Yes.
Right. So
Hmm.
too many clients, right? And
Yes,
and that was exhausting her. And
absolutely.
then which part was it making her do that? That you had her find the burden and then witness to it and then deburden, or was that just
Right.
burden? Can you
She
take us through that?
absolutely, and that was learning about the strong Black woman part. So she learned that this part had been handed down to her from her
Okay.
maternal line. So we
Okay.
wanted to do what we call a legacy unburdening, where
Right.
and when I do legacy unburdenings, I invite in a well and wise ancestor from whatever line we're unburdening, in this case, maternal line, to come in to help with that unburdening
Right.
process. Yeah.
Wow.
And what that
You
does, Bob, is
invariably do it.
unburden.
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and what that does, inviting in that ancestor, is it helps unburden all the women on that line that carried that same burden. So not just the woman, but the women on her maternal line all get unburdened.
Yeah, that's really far out. But then my question is it inevitable there will be a wise ancestor to be found, even in a long history of women and patriarchy for thousands of years, being where women are being overburdened, definitely almost everywhere.
Yeah.
Is it inevitable that one will find that in every tribe or something?
So far, every unburdening I've done, there's been a wise ancestor step
That,
forward and help with the work. Yeah.
that's really
My experience of our ancestors, Bob, is that they want us to heal.
yes,
And again, just like the self, they're not going to hit us over the head and demand that we do it. But when we
yes,
open the door and invite them in, they
yes,
step in to
yes,
support our healing.
yes.
Yeah.
So in a way, can you say that then is the wise ancestor that you find was
Hmm.
operating from the compassionate, intuitive, what you're calling the self, or the
Yeah.
deepest self, the deepest nature, that
Hmm.
that that person can relieve all these other burdens because that person, like the therapist, sees that everybody has that potential self already.
Yeah.
They have the seed
Absolutely.
somewhere in their heart. They see that. That's what makes them wise and Is that right? So they resonate.
That makes them wise, and they've released this burden themselves or whatever burdens they may have carried. So yes, so they exactly, they are in their highest self
Yeah.
also.
Yes, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, by the way, the word family, and
Mm-hmm.
what is can you help me with something that I have? I won't explain the long reasoning, but what difference is there when we use family versus clan?
Yeah.
Never mind KKK crap, but that kind.
Right.
I mean the actual word clan, where because when we use family in this kind of society like we're in, the market capitalism,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
then we're thinking, oh, it's the nuclear family, just mom and dad.
Right.
The extended family. How
Mm-hmm.
big does it have to get before we call it a clan, a kinship clan?
Well, it all can still be family, no matter how big it gets. And, we're talking about nuclear family or
Yes,
your biological family. Also, when we're defining family, it's outside, it's adopted family, it's family, that surrogate family, chosen family. It's
yes.
all of these when we're talking about
Maybe,
family.
wait, but maybe it's better to expand the meaning of family, and
Uh-huh.
because after all, when to make it this narrow thing, it has to be you have to say nuclear. So
Right.
rather than inject the word clan, which then gets a little, there's some other connotations. Uh,
Yeah.
that's a big step for me and something things that I translate because it's
Ah,
actually the
okay.
kula in some spiritual things where
Mm-hmm.
clan is only one syllable, family is three syllables. Uh,
Right.
in Sanskrit, kula is two syllables. So, but family may be better. Thank you. That's just a
Yeah.
like, side little profit I'm getting from being
Excellent.
as a
Excellent.
translator, as a translator. Okay, so then maybe I have to cross that Rubicon. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Then when was it? Okay, so then to take us, so people learn these things. You find the burden. No, what do you do?
Mhm.
Witness. You go to meet the. What is that first part? First part one is what?
Yeah. So the very first part that we're doing is before we can work with that vulnerable part that needs the healing, the wounded one, we
Yes.
have to work with their protectors. So what we're doing is coming into relationship with the parts of ourselves that protect our
Okay.
wounded, vulnerable ones. Yes.
Okay. And that's called the burdens revisited.
No, that is when we're connecting with our protector parts, we're actually just building a relationship with them so
Oh,
that they can stop doing what let's use the example of the person who has kind of this dictatorial personality part, right?
okay. Let's help him.
So that part is doing the behaviors that it's doing as a protector to
Yes.
keep that person from feeling the pain and shame that they carry in their woundedness. So the
Okay.
first part I want to come into relationship with is the one who protects. Because think about protectors or a guard. They're
Yes.
not going to let their guard down unless they have good reason to. So I will never get to the wounded one until I work with the guard, the protector first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the first step.
Yes.
When you have parts one, two, three, four, you have IFS concept one and so forth. So
Right.
I'm just trying to, what did you call that part where you look for the,
So when we're working with the protector, what we're trying to do with the protector is befriend them, is what we call it. That might be in this is probably chapter 2. Befriending the protector. The reason you want to befriend the protector, understanding why the protector is doing their job so that you can give the protector a reason to allow you to work with or for them to come into relationship with that wounded one.
IFS concept one. I have jumped too many chapters ahead. One, protective nature of parts. Okay.
That's right. Yes. Yes. That's where we start with those protectors because we're never going to get to the wounded one unless the protectors trust us and trust the person.
Okay, right. Our parts are in it. Can I read a bit from your thing?
Yes. Go right ahead. Yes.
Parts are in, this is from page 25 in Tamala's wonderful book. When we are born, our parts are in their natural state. In most cases, they are not burdened because they're the tough protectors, right? They can express
Yeah.
the full nature of who they are, playful, curious, calm, free, loving, to name a few. However, as children, when our needs for attention, affection, acceptance, and nurturance go unmet, or made fun of, or denied, our natural ways of becoming exiled. You have that wonderful expression of exile.
Mhm.
We learn that it isn't safe to be fully who we are. We learn that parts of us are unlovable, not good enough, shameful, and shouldn't be hidden, and should be hidden from the disapproving parent,
Mhm. Pretty.
goals to protect us from feeling these strong feelings of worthlessness. They do this in one of two ways. They keep us from experiencing the strong feelings of controlling everything they can. There you go. That's the dictator, right? And keeping us too busy, focused on other things, or distracted to feel our unmet needs, or when something grabbing people and things, because our needs are actually unmet, or when something in our life triggers our feelings of not good enough or shame,
Mhm.
hearts swoop in to douse the severity of these feelings with intense distractions to take the attention off the emotional pain. You put it so beautifully, Tamala, really,
Oh, thank you.
really get
Thank you.
it. I really do.
Yeah.
Very, very
Yeah.
real. So then, okay, tell us next is concept two, IFS, internal family system, concept two, go inside, find
Ah, yes.
ward. Okay, take us.
So, and when you're going inside, I'm helping the client
Mhm.
come from their external world to what happens inside to
Yeah,
meet these family members that are here.
yeah,
So
yeah,
often I just have them close their eyes and ask them, what do you notice? Because the internal family shows up in all types of ways. Some people see their parts. Some
yeah,
people, I might experience my part as heart palpitations.
yeah,
Right? Or
yeah,
I might get clammy and cold. My part might speak to me. They might say something.
yes,
So however it shows up, or an emotion, I might sometimes clients start to get tearful.
yes, yes, yes,
Those are all expressions of our
yes,
parts.
yes,
So I'm going to help them deepen that relationship. The tears are there. Just be with that part. See what
yes,
that part wants you to know about
yes,
it.
yes,
Now, a key comment or phrase rather that we use to make sure that the person can connect with the part
uh-huh,
is how do you feel toward the tears, the upset stomach, the clamminess, whatever it is, the fear, how do you feel toward it? And if
yes,
they tell me any of the words or qualities connected with self, I
yes,
feel compassion for it. I'm
yes,
curious about it. I want to know more about it. I actually feel really connected to these tears. Then
yes.
I know the client has some self energy, and now we can start the work.
I see. I see. That is so cool.
Yeah,
It really is cool. It's very deep, actually.
it
And
is very deep.
in the Buddhist thing, there is this concept that is very badly misunderstood called selflessness. The most important thing for a person in that psychology is
Mm-hmm.
what they call realize your selflessness. And people
Mm-hmm.
wrongly, especially in our modern materialist, spiritually nihilistic culture, you
Mm-hmm.
don't really have a soul, right? You don't get reborn after death. You're just
Yeah.
nothing really. You're just a robot with a biological robot, right? And our science, supposed pathetic materialist science, very
Yeah.
and so uh, what it actually means is that you don't, whatever identity you think you have is not fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Precisely, you're always recreating your identity. You're
Yeah.
constructing it. And so that means we are all walking around, unless we're already healed or enlightened,
Mm-hmm.
or we're walking around stuck as rigidly protecting ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because we think,
Mm-hmm.
really, should be a dictator, or I should be this, that, or whatever it is. And then when that protector makes a command, like you should be hating this, or you should attack,
Mm-hmm.
you should you should do something bad to this one, then we feel we can't, we obey, we're a slave.
Yeah. Right.
That rigid ego. So selflessness means discovering the mutability and the multiplicity of all
Mm.
thing, and thereby becoming responsible for how we create ourselves as we go along.
Absolutely.
That's what it is.
Yes.
And so the first step
Yeah.
in the meditation on selflessness is a meditation where you witness yourself in
Mm-hmm.
the moment of feeling falsely accused, especially maybe by a dear person,
Mm-hmm.
someone you care about who thinks you stole their ice cream or you betrayed them in this way or you did something which you, and in this case, maybe you did do a little something sometimes, but not
Mm-hmm.
that case, the case where you actually are innocent and you
Yeah.
have feelings. And then you're supposed to develop an ability to witness it as if you're like a method actor where you just re-inhabit the memory when you're
Mm-hmm.
very wounded and innocent, and you're therefore sure that you are innocent. So then
Right.
sort of your self-guarding personality emerges in its full force. And then you feel, well, that's me. And you
Mm-hmm.
question that. And then that's when you look to verify if that really is you, if you follow me.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
it's like the initial encounter with the therapist, but of course in this case it's people meditating, and in a way the teacher is the therapist a little bit. So it's in a way that psychology is based on someone who is getting along all right in the relative world, and they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
it's also not that bad a society, not
Right.
horrible, dominating and conflictual society in ancient India. And so therefore it's really the psychology of going from sort of normal in an unenlightened way to a little bit super normal, loving and happy, really creative and blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very similar. At first I was sort of a little surprised, and then I suddenly realized this is really bringing to regular people without any religious thing
Mm-hmm.
deep insight into the multiplicity of the self, to discover
Absolutely.
about themselves. So, the
Yeah.
big movement now, the mindfulness movement, that's every
Mm-hmm.
John Kabat-Zinn and etc.,
Yes.
which is divorced from sort of Hinduism or Buddhism or Taoism, any Eastern thing as religion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Although Western people tend to be suspicious, it is somehow some Eastern
That
religion.
it somehow is. Yeah.
Really more connects to the kind of psychology what you are talking about, and that is
Mm-hmm.
the connection and reinforcing that, and also
Absolutely.
learning from what you are discovering actually,
Yeah.
because you're discovering it in a very rough social setting, which is
Yeah.
our society. We think it's the greatest one that ever existed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but actually it's very, very rough. And
Yeah.
as people who we encounter, let's call it ethnocidally or even genocidally, perfectly well can tell us if we listen.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Yeah.
USA.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
On the other hand, among those kind of imperialist kind of cultures which are wrecking the planet right now, the culture of all the oligarchs, I call them, not
Mm-hmm.
oligarch, but oligarch, because they're all connected to that. Um, we sort of have a license to try to do something about it,
Right. Yeah.
at least unless they put a guy with a openly Nazi tattoo on his body in charge of our military. Then we're really in trouble. And it looks like those senators are wimping out. Very worrisome.
Yeah.
You're free
Yeah.
from Costa Rica right now, so we may.
Free from it. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. But it's interesting the overlap. In one of the things I wanted to say is that IFS that is a psychospiritual model. So it is, just even looking at the self and the qualities of self is connecting to the spiritual side of us as human beings without bringing in the religion. The other point that you said is this is my book, and this was its point, is making this attainable to anyone, not just someone who goes to therapy. So I wanted to take these complex concepts and make them digestible and usable so that people can get some healing on their own. Yeah.
I think it really works that way. I think it really does.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, do you sometimes introduce it with like a weekend retreat someplace or something? Is you're traveling now, or do you do that? So you can
Yes.
do like a 4-day or a 3-day weekend, like a bit long weekend or mid-weekend. You sometimes
Yeah.
you have done it.
I do. I hosted my first women's retreat here in Costa Rica in October. It was 5 days. I'm doing another one starting April 30th, also here in Costa Rica. And
Which place is that? Which place in Costa?
in this next one, the one that starts April 30th, it's actually a 7 day. After I did the 5 day, I realized I had so much more to teach that the next one's got to be a 7 day. It's in Santa Cruz, Costa Rica, on the Pacific side of Costa Rica. And if people are interested, they can contact me at my website at tamalafloyd.com, and there's an interest form for retreats.
Okay.
This is going to be ongoing, though. What I love that you said the fact that I travel. My goal is to, as I travel the world, to host retreats in various areas. So I will in June host one at Esalen, June 23rd to the 27th, and in September I'm going to host one in Morocco.
Morocco, wow. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
If you ever want to do one in New York,
Okay.
New York in the Catskill Mountains at menla.org, you can find that, or menla.org.
Okay.
Menla.org, you can look up the place.
Beautiful.
We're near Omega and also Kripalu, those two.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
We're near them, and then they're clutchy about someone who comes, unfortunately, especially Omega. But in case you don't book with them, we would love to have you.
Love that. Yes, we'll talk.
Menla.org, look it up, and
Menla, I will.
We'll be in touch with you for sure. Anyway, and sometimes I think Kripalu allows one to live something there and then do something. We're a little smaller than they are, so you can't.
Okay.
If you have a huge list, then you probably need to go to one of them.
Okay.
100 or something, or 100. But
no, I like them smaller than that. Yeah. My comfort zone is 30.
You can easily have 100 or so with us,
Yeah.
But that would fill the house. But, we have a lot of smaller ones, 20, 30. And
yes. Mm-hmm.
We would love that. I would love it. I think my wife would really want to attend your thing, Nina. She's a natural therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with my parts for 58 years. So she could probably use a little reinforcement.
Yes.
She would really love it. And she's the one who really manages that place as a volunteer,
Okay.
It's the Dalai Lama's place in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Also in the city, you could do a book signing there anytime, Beth knows all about it,
Okay. Okay.
We would very much welcome it. I think it's just truly great, Really
awesome.
Great. So anything else you would like? We've done about now 40 minutes.
Okay.
Say to keep it under an hour. I would like more, but as you said, even 7 days, I could talk to you about. I am thinking about my parts and my grandfather and I have my family. I have father's line is Southern, guilt-stricken, unquestionably. A lot of generals after the war, a lot of Constitution and law-abiding.
Yeah,
they had, but they were on the wrong side in the war that we seem to be losing again. But my mother's side were on the other side, on the northern side. I have mixed there, but both of them ran away to New York, where you kind of deracinated place, and they both ran away from families, actually, kind of. So I feel very deracinated type. And that's the last question, just for 2 minutes. In the Buddhist thing, there is this thing in addition to complicate matters.
Okay.
The ancestor. I was thinking this morning when I was thinking about having our talk, and I was thinking when I would go back to find a wise ancestor, either of those two lines, let's say, which are both pretty Anglo, I think, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe some Scandinavian mixed in there. And maybe Scandinavian mixed in there. But what I actually would gravitate toward, because of the Buddhist thing about multiple incarnations, multiple lives, which means not just like the theistic side, Christian, Judaic, or Islamic, where you have one future life, right, determined by God. You have life after death, in other words.
Right.
Life before this life.
Right.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
in Asia and worldwide, and also in the Mediterranean, in Jesus's time and in Pythagoras's time, and in Judaism, they still have what they call metempsychosis or former lives. You come.
Mm-hmm.
So I somehow was thinking, looking for a wise ancestor as I was checking through, getting ready to talk to you. And then I found someone, but who wasn't in my lineage, ancestral lineage of my parents,
Uh-huh.
but in my own previous incarnation line,
Mm.
and welcoming me, who I believe I know about, who I think was considered enlightened in his own time, was male.
Okay.
And also you can be female and you can even be non-human.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Gender and also even species is not settled.
Mm-hmm.
We've all been everything, in other words, because former lives are beginningless in that light,
Mm-hmm.
limit backwards. So how, if you had a client who was, if you were in your travels, not probably Morocco, but if you ever went to India and you might end up,
Mm-hmm.
then you would be people who might think they had previous lives. Because
Yes.
in addition, you'd have a fourth thing. It would be legacy, but it would be legacy from your own incarnation line. And
Mm-hmm.
it would be a fourth. You'd have legacy, cultural legacy, then you'd have ancestral legacy, and then you'd have a reincarnational legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
or you'd be going back in your own previous lifetimes. Would that
Right.
your method, the IFS, could that incorporate that? Do you think?
Absolutely, it can incorporate that. Absolutely. And another thing, all of what you just said, and I was thinking when you said the other ancestor from another line, time of your life, another lifetime,
Yes.
that also that ancestor still could be coming to help what's going on in your current lifetime, right?
Yes. Yes.
On this, right? So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When this is another thing. When that well ancestor steps forward, one, unless the client gets some sense or the well ancestor tells us, I'm not necessarily sure how far back on the line that
Yes.
ancestor
Yes.
comes. I mean, in
Yes.
some cases, it's long past any memory or documentation of
Yes.
who this person is.
I,
So also I would hold that. And the other thing, Bob, I trust whatever my clients say come forth. I'm going to hold whatever their experience is, because this is the way the ancestors speaking to them, this is the way the ancestors coming to them, and it's more important that it makes sense to my client than it makes sense to me.
I see. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I had this experience once where I was at a holy mountain in the Himalayas,
Mhm.
a little
Oh,
north of
yeah.
the Himalayas, and when I first saw that mountain, there's a place where the local Tibetans they
Hmm.
bow and they make little cairns. They make little like towers of rocks.
Yeah.
Loosely, they don't do it with mold.
Right.
And so the truck custom is you bow toward the mountain that if you can see it, it's the first place
Hmm.
you can see the snow peak of the mountain. So I was bowing there and just to follow the thing. And suddenly there were two people who I guess were in the top of my brain, but it seemed like they were over my head. And one was
Hmm.
Tibetan and one was Mongolian. And I immediately knew I immediately knew they were me because they were talking about me as being them. And they
Hmm.
were teasing each other, or they were complaining, or I don't know what they were doing, because they hide from me usually. But they were saying, we know much more about this holy mountain than this guy.
Hmm.
We never could get out here because it's so way out in Western Tibet.
Yeah.
In those days, they were bandits, and you had to go in a horse for a month to get there and all this. And the one in Mongolia lived way far away across the desert.
Wow.
We never
Yeah.
got to the holy mountain. And this turkey, what we finally get there is this turkey from New York in a Jeep. And they were laughing. And then I practically sprained my neck, like craning my neck.
Wow.
They
Yeah.
disappeared. But I didn't have a therapist like you to help me actually really find them and be
Yeah.
welcomed by them. They were just
Mm.
teasing me, but
Yeah.
they were so real.
Yes, they
Yeah,
are real. That's the other thing. I'm glad you said that. They are real.
they were, and they were really with
Yeah,
me. They were with me,
that's
writing on
right.
sheet, but I didn't know it. And if I
Yeah,
didn't know it, I might be more. It might help me with some of my local protectors.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and wounded whatever's, wounded
Yeah,
partner.
this reminds me of a quote. Unfortunately, I don't remember who said this quote, but what the quote says is if you're visited by your ancestors in a dream, know that it's a real visitation. So,
Yeah,
however our ancestors show up, it's real. That they're reaching out to you to connect with you, offer information, share something, or be in relationship with
yeah,
you.
yeah. And in a way, they were. I guess I should read the fact that they didn't sort of dialogue with me, having
Right.
was their demonstration. Now you're teaching me their demonstration of having confidence in me that I could refine myself.
That's right.
Like you said,
Yeah.
you don't get into a misplaced pity sort of thing with the client.
Right.
You get all anxious that they must discover this and that. You're
Yeah.
confident they will, and then you're curious,
Right.
open to them, and then that's so wonderful. Leaving the
Yeah.
Forcing them subliminally, and also observing the body phenomenon,
Hmm. Yeah.
enforcing them subliminally that they should have more confidence in themselves.
Right. And also, I look at, you said earlier, going full circle, about your friend who would say that he held that the client could do the work, had the healing, could move forward. And
Yeah.
I kind of look at what I'm doing is I hold the container for the client to do the work that I help facilitate them do. It's like, I'm here, the womb of just holding space for the work that this client is going to do. Yeah.
Okay. Did you say womb? Womb?
Womb.
Tell
Absolutely.
someone. I just want to tell you a funny thing. There's a
Yes.
you might have some Buddhist friends, and they all go on about the Buddha nature,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Buddha nature, but the word that they translate as nature, and even into non-Indian languages like Tibetan and Chinese, they also use a word that's like nature. But the
Uh-huh.
word in Sanskrit is garbha, Garbha, and that
Uh-huh.
word garbha actually means womb. But they didn't want to tell the male chauvinists, samurai and these guys, oh, you guys have a Buddhist womb, a Buddha womb, meaning that your Buddha can be born, your own Buddha can be born.
Yes, exactly.
So they
Oh,
didn't
how
translate it properly.
beautiful.
They didn't translate it properly because of their patriarchal crap.
That's right. Yeah, I appreciate that
I love
share. I
that. Okay,
appreciate that.
listen, Tamala, I have to
Yes.
restrain ourselves. I have to restrain
Okay.
about time. Although I hope to see you again. I want to be your
Yes.
patient. I do. I'm going to come and be your patient whenever you set up and you're not flying by on a railway.
Right. Yes, yes. Well, I do
Really,
see a handful of clients, just a few, but I do see a few
okay, I
clients.
want to be one.
Yeah.
I do. I think it really helped me. I think I
Yeah.
might be very relieved that I have someone else.
If you do something like that, right? Yes.
Even my kids too, my daughter and everything. Anyway,
Yes.
grandchildren and
Thank you
grandchildren. I have
so
two
much, Bob. I've
great
enjoyed our
grandchildren.
time together.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And,
Yeah.
and listen,
Beth
everybody,
said we would
you go
enjoy
get
each
this book.
other.
Everybody, you go get this book, uh, Listening When Parts Speak. And I can say listening when your parts speak.
That's
And
right.
she didn't do that. She's more relaxed than me. So she didn't say that. But Tamala Floyd, LSCW, licensed social care worker. Is that right?
Licensed clinical social
Clinical
worker.
social worker.
Yes. Yeah.
Clinical social worker. She's tremendous. The book is
Oh,
tremendous. And I'm still learning from it. And I don't know how she's going to handle all the many of you who want to be her clients when you read this. But she's giving the book precisely because it will help you do it yourself and
absolutely.
carefully at the many sides of yourself and be more confident that you can manage those better to have a better life. So that's what we have to do now because we're going to have a lot of trouble from outside in the coming period of time. Be sure of that. But it won't last long, hopefully. I will get past it. Thank you, Tamala.
Always. Thank you so much, Bob. I enjoyed every moment.
Me too. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay?
The Bob Thurman podcast is produced through a Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Please be sure to like, share, and repost on your favorite social media platforms. And is brought to you in part through the generous support of the Tibet House US Menla membership community and listeners like you. To learn more about the benefits of Tibet House membership, please visit our websites at thus.org, menla.org, and bobthurman.com. Tashi Delek, and thanks for tuning in.